The year is 2007. Mario Galaxy has just released and is quickly taking Nintendo fans by storm. The perfect blend between the exciting new motion controls of the Wii and the fun, snappy gameplay of Mario 64 and Sunshine packed into one gigantic story. What's more, Mario Galaxy is beautiful. Although it's no surprise that these graphics are the best Mario had ever seen, what strikes me the most is the art direction. The lighting and design is equally as amazing as the newly pumped resolution and polygon count, fully utilizing the Wii's capabilities and showing off what Mario can really be. It's been said many times before that a Mario game doesn't need a story, but to me, Super Mario Galaxy is first and foremost a story more than it is just a game. Mario Galaxy is a game with death at its core, hidden in crevices and displayed in plain sight, with on one hand, some of the most brutal game over screens of any Mario game, and on the other, in the transformation of the gentle and naive Lumas, the little star children of the series, transforming into objects to progress the game's storyline. At first, the cartoonish style doesn't really invite the player to consider Lumas more deeply beyond their use as a tool to aid gameplay, but underneath the surface lies a sad and beautiful story, driven entirely by their presence. Princess Rosalina, princess of the Comet Observatory and mother of the Lumas, a quiet and especially kind character within the Mario franchise. Rosalina's story, one of loss, learning, and rebirth, fits in especially well with the overarching themes of Super Mario Galaxy and helps explain the broader connections between the Luma's life cycle and philosophy and general life in the Mario universe. Throughout every world, the player is constantly seeing Lumas transforming into power-ups, planets, and even galaxies. And in the case of my first playthrough, I simply didn't stop to consider the broader implications of the Luma's integration into the Galaxy story. At least, not until I read through Rosalina's storybook all the way in my second playthrough of the game. A good way into the main storyline, after collecting 17 Power Stars, you unlock the Comet Observatory's library. Unlike the other buildings, it is not announced, nor is it useful to progress the game further, and yet it stands there, allowing the player to enter if they so choose. And I'm fairly sure that many of you have read or at least heard of the storybook that the players find there, being read to you by Princess Rosalina herself, alongside the many Lumas who float patiently upon the library's carpet. But if you haven't, then I do have quite the story to tell. Not only does Rosalina's story explain quite a lot about the world you've been exploring and the Luma's place within it, but it is, in and of itself, a shockingly beautiful and harrowing story, completely separate from the rest of the game.
Chapter 1: The Celestial Duo. Our story begins a very, very long time ago with a young girl. One day, this girl spotted a rusted spaceship holding a small star child.
What's your name? Are you lost?
The girl asked the star child.
I'm Luma, and I'm waiting for Mama. She's waiting for me at Comet,
said the star child, who had been waiting day and night.
Don't worry, I'll wait with you,
the little girl promised Luma. At nightfall, the little girl borrowed her father's telescope and peered into the sky. She looked and looked, but she saw nothing. Hours turned into days and then years, but still, the sky revealed nothing. Finally, the little girl sighed and said to Luma,
"If we stay here looking much longer, I'll be an old lady soon."
But then, she had an idea.
Why don't we go out there and find your mother ourselves?
The girl and Luma fixed up the rusty spaceship, and then the two set sail into the starry sky. And this is how the search for the Celestial Mother began.
The storybook begins with a curious but hopeful introduction of the two main characters, young Rosalina and Luma. It's not yet clear what is to come, but you can already see hints of young Rosalina's motivations, quickly agreeing to help Luma find their mother and spending years together before even setting out on their journey to find the Celestial Mother. The story itself is strangely absurd and has this tone of being a child's bedtime story, but it's not a work of fiction, and rather Rosalina's own recounting of her childhood. This is the story of how Rosalina came to be the Celestial Mother, her journey with loss, and the cycles of rebirth that permeate through all things. In the opening cutscene of Mario Galaxy, it is explained that every 100 years, a comet appears in the skies above the Mushroom Kingdom, filling the skies and sending countless shooting stars raining down. This centenary event is celebrated as the Star Festival, and Princess Peach has sent Mario a letter inviting him to see a star creature that she has just discovered, fallen from the comet. Unfortunately, shortly after Mario's arrival, Bowser begins his plot to create a new galaxy for himself to rule, using the power of 7 grand stars. After Bowser lifts Peach's entire castle from the Earth with Mario and Peach still on it, Comet banishes Mario to a nearby planet. Luckily, this planet ends up being the gateway to the starry sky, where 3 Lumas disguised as star bunnies find him and eventually reveal themselves, agreeing to bring him to Rosalina, which they refer to as Mama. Rosalina allows Mario to board the Comet Observatory, which we later learn is the comet from the Star Festival referenced in the opening.
Chapter 2 Star Bits. Days passed with no sight of the comet or even a single planet. Instead, asteroids extended for as far as the eye could see.
If I had known it was gonna take this long, I would have packed more jam,
said the little girl above the rumble of her belly. Before they left, she had packed all the essentials: telescope, butterfly net, stuffed bunny, bread, milk, jam, and apricot-flavored tea, but
I forgot to bring water.
At this, Luma burst into gales of laughter, and the girl began to pout.
As long as there's starfish, I'll be fine. Want some?
The little girl couldn't stay mad after hearing this. Luma continued to laugh, and the girl couldn't help but join in.
All right, maybe just a nibble.
Leaning far out of the ship, the pair began to collect star bits with the girl's net. They almost fell out a few times, but they kept on collecting. The star bits tasted like honey.
Rosalina is naive, and to prepare for her search, she brings very little onto the spaceship, just a handful of items which are surely not enough for the long expedition to come. The orange apricot color of the tea and jam she packs is a hopeful reminder of what she enjoys and finds safe, making its first appearance as the color of Rosalina's innocence and hope. This color will return again. She is underprepared and cannot handle this responsibility on her own. She realizes too that she's out of her depth when she remembers that she has not brought any water at all. After Rosalina explains that she hasn't packed water, Luma seemingly doesn't understand the situation and begins to laugh, explaining that starbits are all that they will need. Rosalina tries them, and sure enough, they are not only good food for Lumas, but humans as well. She agrees to catch more with the net they brought. Together, they are well suited for the adventure. This is a miraculous fix for what should have been a very serious problem. While this may even cause the player to dismiss the episode as nothing more than the playful gimmick of a fairy tale, each chapter will reveal more aspects of the world that the player has already seen up until that point, eventually entirely grounding itself within the world's reality. This story simply reflects the logic that young Rosalina had felt at the time, in the first stage of her life, prior to her maturing into the motherly figure that greets Mario at the gateway to the starry sky. During your first mission to take back the first Grand Star, the player learns that these shooting stars that fall during the Star Festival are starbits, which had fallen from the Comet Observatory that Rosalina and the Lumas live upon. Starbits are one of the most important materials in the Mario Galaxy universe, being emitted from celestial bodies and creating all life in the universe. Starbits condense to form Lumas, and from there can become almost anything. We've already seen that they can be eaten, but starbits also come from defeated enemies exploding outward after taking damage or dying. Not coming from the death itself, but the creature returning to its primordial form, an almost abstract representation of starbits' capacity to make up living creatures. Likewise, starbits are an integral piece of the Luma's life cycle, binding all life in the Mario Galaxy universe.
Chapter 3 The Comet. A beam of light pierced through the ship's window. Thinking it was the morning sun, the girl peered through the window, only to find a turquoise blue comet shimmering at her. The little girl shook the sleeping Luma awake and shouted excitedly,
We have to get to that comet.
The pair descended on the comet, and they found it was made of ice. They looked high and low, but Luma's mother was nowhere to be found. Exhausted, the little girl sat down with a flop, utterly unable to take another step.
Look!
Peering down at the icy ground, where Luma was pointing, the girl suddenly noticed clusters of star bits encased in the ice.
Pretty good, huh? Finding star bits is my specialty.
Said Luma, beaming.
There's ice here, but it's so warm. I bet there's water here too.
The two decide to stay on the comet for a while. Riding the turquoise comet, the pair continued their search for Luma's mother.
On his way to collect the first grand star needed to power the Comet Observatory, Mario frees a Luma, which has been captured. After thanking, the Luma asks, "Would you mind rescuing my buddy and that base up there too? I'll transform into a sling star," and transforms without any further introductions. What could be interpreted as a grand gesture of self-sacrifice by these Lumas is simply treated as a casual transformation for the benefit of those in need. This is where the beauty of the Luma's philosophy lies. Lumas believe that their purpose is to transform into different things, in hopes of inspiring and aiding others. They quickly change not just into sling stars, but life mushrooms to prolong the lives of others, or even entire planets to provide shelter and home, without ever introducing themselves or asking for anything in return. Once a Luma transforms into a non-living thing, they cannot reform back into a Luma, crossing a point of no return, ending that stage of their life. Upon returning the first grand star, Rosalina has this to say. "Oh, thank you for saving the grand star. These star people are my family. They mean so much to me." To her and to all Lumas, a Luma in the next stage of their life is still very much alive and deserves equal respect as a breathing and talking Luma does. The grand stars which Bowser has used to power his generators then were once Lumas who have since transformed and remain a part of Rosalina's family. Bowser is imprisoning these grand stars, and the Lumas are worried sick about their safe return. Mario's mission is not that of taking back the fuel for the Comet Observatory, but the members of a separated family. Despite their willingness to sacrifice themselves, Lumas care deeply for human and plant life alike, respecting the ways they choose to live. They tend to a garden at the top of the Comet Observatory and gather the grand stars, promising to help Mario save Princess Peach and to stop Bowser from causing harm to anyone else. These acts of kindness remind the player of the importance of cherishing life and deepen the connection between the Lumas and the broader logic of the life force that permeates the Mario Galaxy universe.
Chapter 4. The Dream. One night, the girl dreamed about her own mother.
Where are you going?
She asked her mother's retreating back. Without turning, her mother replied, "Don't fret, dearest. I'm not going anywhere. I'm always watching over you, like the sun in the day and the moon in the night." A wave of sadness washed over the girl.
What about it when it rains and I can't see the sun or the moon?
Her mother thought for a moment before responding. "I will turn into a star in the clouds and wait for your tears to dry." When she awoke, the girl's face was damped with tears.
You have star bits in your eyes,
said Luma to the girl. Wiping her face, the girl replied,
"These are tears, not star bits. I'm crying because I'll never see my mother ever again."
At this, Luma began to cry too.
Mama, Mama.
The pair traveled through the starry skies, and though they encountered many other comets, not one of them held Luna's mother. Luma was despondent.
Now, Luma. The rain clouds won't go away if you keep crying,
the girl said, giving Luma a squeeze.
I'll give you a present if you stop.
The girl closed her eyes and said gently,
I'll take care of you.
With these words, she felt a small spark in her heart.
The second hint at young Rosalina's motivations come in the form of a dream. a scene where Rosalina's mother is consoling her daughter, who asks if they will ever see each other again. When her mother explains that she will always be with her as a guiding star, Rosalina does not accept this and awakens crying, telling Luma that she will never see her mother again. It's not yet explained where her mother has gone, but it very much seems that in some way, the comet which Rosalina and Luma found represents this promise, providing to her what she needed most in that time: warmth, water, and shelter. Perhaps this is why young Rosalina was drawn to the shining blue comet in the first place, a reminder of her mother. Luma tells Rosalina that she has star bits in her eyes. As Lumas are formed from the star bits that fall from celestial bodies, it seems Luma has begun to see Rosalina as a mother figure as well. This also connects humans with stars, perhaps explaining that Rosalina's mother truly has become a star in the clouds like she promised in Rosalina's dream. Upon death, even humans release star bits, which, much like celestial bodies and star bits from any place, can become a Luma. While Luma may have indeed mistaken the tears streaming from Rosalina's eyes for star bits, I believe that the comparison is by no means coincidental. In remembering her mother, Rosalina still carries part of the life force that birthed her within herself. Her tears are a representation of the connection that holds them together. What finally brings young Rosalina peace at this moment is squeezing Luma and promising to care for them. Without knowing, Rosalina has renewed the cycle and begun fostering a new family. After years of searching, Luma has accepted that their new celestial mother is Rosalina, starting a new cycle for themselves as well. After returning to the Stargate where you first met Rosalina, she has this to say: "The Luma that's been traveling with you may also grow up to become a star someday. Some Lumas become planets, some become comets, and a few become power stars. I'm traveling with them while they look for a place to be reborn." Young Rosalina is beginning to learn what the Rosalina of Mario Galaxy already knows. There is life after death, and at the same time, she is allowed to grieve what she has lost.
Chapter 5. Home.
The kitchen will go over here, and the library will go over there,
The girl said busily to herself.
We'll put the gate here.
Ever since the girl took Luma under her care, she had been bustling about at a feverish pace.
It's a lot of work, but it's worth it to make a happy home.
It turned out that star bits weren't the only thing buried in the ice. There were tools and furniture, unlike any they had ever seen, and the girl used them to build a home. Looking at the completed house, Luma remarked,
Don't you think it's awfully big for just the two of us?
with a library, bedroom, kitchen, fountain, and gate, it was still certainly spacious, but still, something seemed to be missing.
If only my father, brother, and mother were here,
The girl said wistfully. Indeed, the house was too large for its two small residents. That night, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny close to her heart, the girl fell asleep in the starship.
In better spirits, Rosalina begins to construct a home for her and Luma, unearthing resources from within the ice of the comet, which continue to provide for young Rosalina. As they build each section, you realize that they describe the comet observatory Mario finds himself in, the kitchen, the library where you are being read this story, the gate which you first arrived from. For a time, caring for Luma comforts Rosalina until she finds that she still feels lonely, creating a large home for a family that has not yet been filled. She thinks of her mother, father, and brother, and misses them. The fact that they've chosen to build their home upon a comet rather than a planet emphasizes the fact that she is still looking for something, settling upon something that is constantly meandering across the universe. Her story has not yet finished, much like the Rosalina that you first meet, constantly traveling in search for places for Lumas to be reborn. But what is rebirth for a Luma? At the very beginning of a Luma's life cycle, they are nothing more than star bits, the stardust of celestial bodies scattered across the universe, growing into all life, and sometimes converging like a rolling snowball until a Luma is born. Quickly after, still naive and unknowing, a Luma already has the urge to grow and transform, hungering for star bits and seeking to become whole again, missing their mother and the stardust which they have now been separated from. Eventually, after gaining enough mass, the Luma will metamorphosize into one of many different celestial bodies, such as planets, stars, and grand stars, to name a few. In an effort to help those in need, a Luma may also become something different, such as a sling star or life mushroom if it is required of them. Either way, with this, they have begun the next stage of their life. Different colored Lumas are capable of transforming into different things for the third stage of their cycle. It's not entirely explained what causes the differences in a Luma's color and therefore abilities, but it appears that the material of the celestial body in which they are birthed can have an impact on this. The apricot Luma that accompanies you on your journey, for instance, initially emerging from an apricot-colored planet. Lumas are also born from dying stars, but this is never seen in the game, so it is not clear what exact process contributes to their differences in this case. Yellow Lumas are the most commonly encountered during gameplay, waiting in various places throughout Mario's journey to transform into sling stars and launch stars, forms of travel which fling Mario from planet to planet using black holes to curve the trajectory perfectly into where he needs to go. It's quite the leap from the pipe travel Mario is accustomed to, and it is quite beautiful. Red Lumas form into red stars which grant its users temporary flight. Green Lumas become green stars, which give their holders access to challenge galaxies if enough are brought together. Blue Lumas turn into pole stars that can lift the player and aid in travel by providing controlled gravitational force. Lumaleaves, or Salesman Lumas, are cyan Lumas who have the ability to become life mushrooms and one-up mushrooms. Although all Lumas who transform are stuck in their new forms, Lumaleaves in particular are an interesting case, as the lifespan of their new form is much shorter than any other Luma, instantly being expended by the player upon transforming. Hungry Lumas are pinkish-orange Lumas that are very similar in design to Lumaleaves. They have the ability to transform into new planets or galaxies, which can be explored. Interestingly, they also leave behind a launch star, which will disappear if the player returns later on. When returning, a pink Luma stands in place of the previous launch star and will be able to transform into a new launch star, allowing access to the original galaxy or planet. There are a handful of other colored Lumas, like Lubba, Polari, and the Co-Star Luma, although little is known about their life cycles, or they simply do not appear in Super Mario Galaxy in the first place. So I will move on for now and perhaps touch upon the topic in another video. At the end of the day, no matter what a Luma is destined to become, their first priority is to be of assistance, saving friends and helping others travel, dreaming to become a star which may inspire others, or to be a guiding light in the dark. Lumas are the breathing embodiment of star bits, the most basic and raw material which is built upon to create all things within the Mario Galaxy universe. Once a Luma has entered the third stage of their life, there are many ways that they may emit star bits to kickstart the next cycle. For planets and galaxies that foster life, all living things return to their most basic form upon death, scattering star bits back into the cosmos, and eventually regaining life as a Luma. For stars, they will eventually die out in a massive burst of star bits, releasing the mass that they gained in that way. No matter how it is done, Lumas are in a constant state of birth and rebirth, recycling the old into the new, and providing the opportunity for anything to become something new. Even the humans and animals of the Mario Galaxy universe exist within this cycle, releasing star bits upon death and kickstarting the first stage of a Luma's life. There is a beautiful intersection of game design and narrative theme in the color coding of Lumas to represent different abilities. On a practical level, it's important for the player to be able to quickly recognize the function that different objects in the game serve, but there is a symbolic meaning in this varied portrayal. The division into yellow, red, as well as more fantastical colors like blue or green is a clear homage to the scientific periodization of stellar evolution, red giants, white dwarfs, and the like. The personification of these celestial bodies as Lumas, especially given their already clear connection to the idea of the transitory nature of life, poses a beautiful question. If the planet we live on, the air we breathe, and indeed our very bodies were formed out of stardust at some point billions of years ago, what separates us from those distant twinkles that dot the night sky? Perhaps on a molecular level, very little. We see that, thanks to the help of the many Lumas that Mario encounters in Super Mario Galaxy, that the stars are our brethren.
Chapter 6 Friends. Then one day, while the girls sat sipping tea, a tiny apricot-colored planet appeared on the horizon. From the planet, another Luma of the same color emerged.
Do you two know each other?
The girl asked the two Lumas gleefully. Despite the girls' excitement, they seemed uneasy. The two Lumas neither drew closer nor backed away from each other. Instead, they just stared. Then one Luma broke the silence.
My mama!
At once, the apricot Luma parroted back.
My mama! My mama! My mama! My mama!
The two Lumas began to dance around the girl frantically, and neither showed any sign of stopping.
My mama! My mama! My mama! My mama! My mama!
The girl was so charmed by this adorable scene that she couldn't help but laugh. And that's when something very strange happened. Suddenly, more Lumas began to pop out from the apricot planet. They were different colors, but they all shouted the same thing.
My mama!
The sight of all the shouting Lumas only made the girl laugh harder. What am I gonna do with all these children? The Lumas just stared blankly as she doubled over laughing.
I guess we'll have to name each and every one of you.
Tomorrow, once she had finished naming them all, she would begin moving all the Lumas into the new house.
Continuing the colors theme of childlike wonder, Rosalina witnesses an apricot-colored Luma emerge from a similarly colored planet. For the first time, Rosalina has witnessed where Lumas come from, birthed from celestial bodies, but she does not yet understand that the Luma has just been born and asks if the two know one another. Luma happily announces to the apricot Luma that they have found a mother, and the two Lumas dance in celebration. Lumas spend their lives searching to be reunited with the rest of the universe, acquiring star bits to grow, but also searching for family. These desires being one and the same, as starbits and Lumas are both fundamentally the physical manifestation of the universe's life force. One, its raw form, and the other, condensed into concrete beings. Many more Lumas arrive, and Rosalina decides that she will care for them all, finally having a family to fill the new Comet Observatory, as well as her heart. Rosalina has truly become a mother figure for the Lumas now, guiding them and gaining the title Mama, which she is always referred to during the game's storyline by other Lumas. Her new family being not quite the same as the last, but a new cycle.
Chapter 7: The Telescope. After seeing their 100th comet, a sudden thought popped into the girl's head.
I wonder if my home planet is still as blue as it was.
That's when she remembered her father's telescope. Peeking into the telescope, a tiny blue dot floated into sight. It was smaller than a star bit.
How strange. It's so far away, but it feels so close.
She twisted the knob of the telescope, and the blue dot grew until she could make out a grassy hill knotted with flowers. It seemed very familiar to her. Zooming even closer, a terrace on the hill came into view.
I used to go stargazing there when I lived on my home planet.
She remembered rubbing the sleep out of her eyes as she followed her father up that hill to look at the stars. She remembered how she and her brother would sled down that hill. She remembered having picnics with her mother on that hill on bright and windy days.
I want to go home. I want to go home right now.
The girl burst into tears, and the Lumas didn't know what to do.
I want to go home. I want to go back to my house by the hill. I want to see my mother.
The girl was shouting now, her face wet with tears.
But I know she's not there. I knew all along that she wasn't up there in the sky because she's sleeping under the tree on the hill.
The girl's cries echoed through the stars, and a hush fell over the area.
There is another connection to why Rosalina wanted to fly towards the blue comet, as she remembers the distinct shining blue of her home planet. The motif of blue runs through Rosalina's storyline, signifying home and family, as well as in the primary color of her design. She uses her father's telescope to see if her home is still this blue, but is confronted by the sight of the hill in which her mother was buried. Perhaps she wanted to help Luma find their own mother as a distraction. For the first time, young Rosalina admits to herself that her mother has passed away. Her homesickness grows, even being surrounded by her new family, because she cannot replace her mother. She accepts that there is no hope for things to ever be the same, her mother becoming part of the planet and re-entering into the Luma's life cycle to become something new. The colored flowers growing from the site of her burial, evoking the image of starbits and showing that life has already begun anew from her mother's death. Rosalina asserts many times to Mario that she is helping him not only to save the grand stars that Bowser has kidnapped, but also to help Mario save his special one. From the very start of Rosalina's story, she has always cared about reuniting individuals with their families, traveling with Luma to help find their mother, empathizing due to the loss of her own.
Chapter 8. The Wish. Though usually quite cheery, one day the girl became sad again. Luma drew close and tried to comfort her.
You still have me? And don't be sad about your mama, because she's part of you. That means she's always close by. It's like me. I love starbits because they remind me of my mama. No,
The girl said, unable to stop the tears. A lonely look flickered across Luma's face, but it was soon replaced by a wide grin.
I have an idea! I will transform into a comet! A story comet that can carry you all on this journey!
With that, Luma, trailing bands of light, soared high into the sky, and just as quickly started to plummet back down. Kaboom! Kablam! The ground shook, and a bright light poured into the crater that the Luma had created. The bands of light twisted together to form a comet tail, and then Luma emerged, reborn as a comet. The girl could scarcely believe her eyes.
But how?
She kept asking.
Our destiny as Lumas is to transform into different things!
Said a red Luma, who had suddenly appeared.
Stars, comets, planets, we can become all of these things. When I grow up, I want to become a star that will make someone special smile,
Said a green Luma. A blue Luma chimed in.
That Luma who turned to a real cutie McCarran, didn't he?
All the Lumas together said,
No more crying, Mama!
Thank you, said the girl in a whisper, and she pulled the Lumas close and hugged them. From that day on, star bits no longer fell from the girl's eyes.
Although she tries to be strong, there are days when young Rosalina can't help but cry. Luma couldn't understand Rosalina's sadness at first, even now explaining again that parts of their mothers live on, finding solace in the starbits their mother became. Rosalina, despite all of her growth, continues to sob. The persistence of her inconsolability ignites a spark of recognition in Luma. They must share their perspective on the true nature of life. Rosalina's most trusted companion vows to help by transforming into a comet. What better way to transmit the Luma's understanding of existence than to continue the cycle of life by becoming something new? On one hand, this is a sacrifice, but on the other, it is an inflection point that marks maturity for both Rosalina and Luma. By arriving at a mutual understanding, they hope to transform into something beyond the form in which they had begun their journey. Luma reminds Rosalina of her mother's promise, showing her that life can be recycled into new things, helping her to finally accept her mother's death. She can have a new family without replacing her mother. Her old family, her mother, they are not forgotten. No matter how much she's moved on, she'll never forget. They'll always be there in at least some capacity, guiding her and helping her find herself.
Final chapter. Family. With its many Lumas and telescopes, the comet was quite a sight to behold. The girl and the Lumas were proud to call it home. At a welcoming party for a new Luma, the girl gathered everyone in the kitchen and said in a louder voice than usual,
Alright everyone, let's make a cake. A cake sprinkled with star bits. Then it will be a star cake.
The Lumas excitedly began to gather the ingredients. As she watched the Lumas scurry about, the girl smiled and thought to herself,
This is my family now, and I will stay with them until they're ready to leave the nest. And when they do leave, I'll see them off with a smile. because that's what makes a mother happiest.
That night, when the girl lay down to sleep, a soft light enveloped her and reminded her of the blue planet she once called home.
But it would be nice to return home once every 100 years or so, to nap in my favorite sleeping nook.
The comet carrying the Lumas and the girl continues on its journey to this very day. With more family members in tow that can be counted, it's said that the comet visits the girl's home planet once every 100 years, its proud white tail glittering in the sky. The end. That's all. My story is finished.
The Search for the Celestial Mother is a story of found family and what comes after loss. Rosalina proudly calls the Comet Observatory her home, shining the same bright blue and being filled with a new family. She speaks of the love of a mother, wanting the Lumas to grow and accepting that each one will leave someday, finally finding peace in the way people come and go from one's life. She knows her mother is still with her, whether as the Comet Observatory, a passing star, or the pieces of her that came from her mother. Rosalina accepts that there is more after one cycle has ended, and she finally understands the cycle of life and rebirth that exists through her universe. She decides to continue her journey, welcoming new Lumas into the world and guiding them as they grow and searching for a place to be reborn. Even still, Rosalina has learned that none of this is to replace her old family, and she promises to visit home every 100 years. It is with this declaration of a once-in-a-century return that we see the immediate purpose of Rosalina's story. It is an origin story that explains the cyclical nature of a comet, and a quite appropriate one at that. In the Greco-Roman tradition, the planets are gods. Helios, in his ever-present glory, parades his chariot across the sky. It is perhaps unsurprising that we as humans resort to placing the most grandiose beings at the heart of the celestial bodies that cast their ever-imposing continuances on Earth. But what sort of figure could we even think to ascribe to something as fleeting as a comet, which doesn't make itself known for decades at a time? A wanderer, a humble nomad in search of something, and yet with a pattern of return. A mystical princess with her heavenly entourage. In other words, Rosalina. At the very end of the game, Mario removes the grand star from Bowser's galaxy reactor at the center of the universe, causing it to implode on itself, creating a massive black hole. Amidst the chaos, the massive black hole is barraged by Lumas, neutralizing the implosion and creating an entirely new universe. Rosalina appears before Mario and guides him through the birth of this new universe, explaining that there is a cycle to things, very much reflecting the story from her storybook. Rosalina explains that things do not repeat themselves exactly the same way, and that, much like Rosalina's new family, the universe has begun a new cycle. Entirely new, but still the same. This universe fills the space of the old, but it does not replace it exactly. Things can't continue at the same pace forever. Eventually, you need to try something new. That doesn't mean you have to forget the old. It means the old can change. When stars die, they turn to stardust and scatter across the cosmos. Eventually, that stardust reforms to create a new star, and so the cycle of life continues. But the cycle never repeats itself in quite the same way. So, you'll see. Yes, all new life carries the essence of stars, even all of you. I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about how I will feel at the very end of my life. Will I have regrets, or will I have moved on past my mistakes? Will I be proud of who I will have become and what I left in the world? This story chooses not to tell that of what happens at the end, but rather after the story has already concluded. What happens after death? What you become after you are no longer you? Even while we live, our bodies replace billions of cells every day, and it's been said that there's no trace of your cells every 7 years. It's a constant cycle making you who you are out of new things, and one day, even when you, on some existential level, are gone, every part of you will persist. It's compelling to imagine then that most of your body has already returned to the earth, even as you're still breathing and living now. The number of molecules in every single breath we take is extremely large. 25 sextillion molecules that will be evenly dispersed through time. With only tens of billions of animals on Earth, there's more than enough to reach every pair of lungs on the planet. We can only assume you'd be gone after the 2,000 or so years it might take, but after an entire lifetime, you'd leave undetectable traces of yourself, and even if nobody knew it, you'd be part of a story being shared long after you're gone. But if all it would take is one breath, can you imagine the impression you'll be leaving one day after every single choice you've made? In the end, Mario Galaxy is not a game about death, but the things that come after, the ways in which you touch people's worlds and live on in the good you've done.